Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. I'm in the house today with my friend Tony Whatley. I cannot wait to get into his story, but let me introduce him real quick. Tony is a business mentor, speaker, best-selling author, and podcast host. He is best known as co-founder of LS1Tech, an online automotive community which grew into the largest of its kind with over 300,000 registered members. This business sold for millions in only 5 years after starting. And amazingly, it was just his part-time business. So now Tony is into coaching, podcasting, speaking, hanging out with your boy C-Roc. And also him and his wife love exploring the world and racing high-performance cars. Tony, welcome to the What Are You Made Of show.
C-Roc, thank you for having me on the show, brother. It's always good to connect. And man, let's just bring some energy and some insightful advice to these people today.
Yeah, so I want to look forward to sharing your content, your story. But before we do that, I always start the show with the question, what are you made of, Tony?
I'm going to give you the technical answer, carbon and probably a lot of water.
Okay. Then let's go beyond that.
So
wait a minute. Carbon, I guess.
Carbon. Yeah. Aren't we all carbon-based life forms?
I'm not a chemist, man. I'm not a rocket scientist either. I always talk about rocket fuel, not rocket science. So I keep things
C-Rocket.
There you go. So what are the ingredients that have gone into making Tony who he is today? And you could take us back, as far as diapers if you want to.
Man.
Or anywhere up until then, now. So
I am the product of two very disciplinarian parents. Okay. Dad, U.S. Marine veteran from Vietnam. And he was the physical and mental disciplinarian, the leader type personality. He was gunny sergeant. And so I grew up with that side of discipline. And my mom is a Japanese immigrant who was very disciplinarian when it came to education. To give you guys a perspective here, I never missed a single day of school from kindergarten through graduation. And if my ass wasn't dying, I was going to get on that bus because, for context, women in her generation, they didn't get to finish high school. They basically worked through junior high and they got pulled out and they worked on the farms. So she greatly valued education and make sure that I was always going and getting that, because it's just how we hear the Japanese dragon mothers and things like that. It's true. That's who she was. House was always spotless and, very, very demanding on different things. And actually the first time I got a C in my life was in college, and I thought my life was over at that point.
I love it. Where did you grow up?
Suburb of Houston, Texas. I'm still in the Houston area, but I grew up in Friendswood, Texas. Back then there was about 15,000 people in the town and just over 1,000 students in the entire high school, to give you guys an idea.
Gotcha. And now growing up in that environment, what were the pluses and minuses for you? And did you go through a rebellious period?
Yeah, I think that we all do. But for me, I grew up in flip houses, basically. My parents, in order to give my sister and I a good education, they moved to that town because they had a good school district, and they didn't necessarily have the means to afford that. So we basically would buy the crappiest house in the crappiest neighborhood, and we would live in it 3 or 4 years while we were upgrading the house as we lived in it. And we would buy a little bit bigger houses. My sister and I grew a little older, and then we did that 3 times. So we lived in 3 flip houses, and I didn't know that this was abnormal. I just thought that was what you do. So I was the one painting and pulling up carpet and scraping off wallpaper and replacing trim and fixing things. My dad and I were both very handy. My dad and my grandfather were also very handy, mechanically minded, and we could fix things. We got good at restoring houses or cars or whatever we got our hands on, because I think it was just the means that we had to do. We didn't have money. So we learned to respect a lot of the things that we have and treat them as gold, even though they may be less than what other people have. But here's the beauty of growing up in a town that had nearby affluence. When I got old enough to ride my bicycle, I would ride it around and go to these different neighborhoods that were a couple miles away, and I would see these big houses. And I used to just park my bicycle and just look at these houses in amazement and count how many cars were in the driveway. And I knew that there wasn't a lot of people living in that house, but how did they have like 4 or 5 cars in the driveway? It just didn't make sense to me, as my parents sometimes had to split vehicles. And I remember visualizing, like, why is there so many windows on the front of this house? I mean, this is a funny question. I still bring it to me in adulthood now, is that my house only had 3 windows on the front of it, One of them was in my sister's bedroom, which I was off limits. I couldn't look out that window. The other one was in my room, which was blocked by my bunk bed, and it was kind of blocking the window. So I only had one window to look out of the front of the house. And I would remember watching my sister get on the school bus every morning when I was really little and just waving to her out that window. So I really just had a view of one window out of a house, thinking that was normal, obviously, again. And when I started to see these big houses with big windows and multiple windows, I used to visualize what would it be like to run through the hallways and look out of that window and that window? And what the view looks like out of that window? And as funny as it is, my wife is a realtor now, and sometimes we'll go do showings and I'll be at these big houses and I will still look out every single window that I pass by. It's like out of habit. So things that we carry from our childhood really do influence our adulthood.
Yeah, yeah. I love windows. I have windows here. The ocean's right there, and I feel you, man. Same thing. And the views to me is such an important thing. When I wake up in the morning, I look out. I never ever take it for granted. The sunrise, the different pictures. I post a lot, especially in the summertime when the sun moves over this way a little bit further. The different paintings just blow me away. And I start actually, even though the summertime, the clocks here move back. I don't know. I think Houston moves back too in the springtime, right? And then you lose an hour of sleep. I still tend to get up earlier when it's summertime comes around because the sunrise is so beautiful that like I'm afraid I'm going to miss it every morning. I'm going to miss a certain picture. So no, I definitely feel you with that. So how did you get into the car business in the first place? Were you in car sales or something before you started your online community?
No, for me, I've always been a car fanatic, and I don't even know why. I think that some of us are just born this way, and it goes even back to childhood. I remember sitting at the kitchen table while my mom was making dinner, and she would buy me these coloring books from the dime store. And instead of coloring the pages on the book, I would actually draw cars and trucks and airplanes and all the blank spaces and in the back of the covers. And my dad worked in the chemical refineries at that point, and he would bring home washers, nut and bolt washers. And I had a Ziploc bag collection of different size washers and stuff. And I would trace those to make the wheels and the tires. So my cars started to look more like cars instead of like frumpy looking things with square wheels. And that's just what I was. And then eventually she just started giving me just blanks of sheets of paper to draw and do things with cars. So I was always fascinated by mechanical things, whether that was World War II aircraft and tanks or trucks or boats, just anything with a motor in it. I was always really drawn to that, even as a little kid, like probably going 3 years old type range. And so when I decided that I wanted to break the generational curse of not having money, it was me to go to university. I was the first one in my family on both sides to actually go to college, and my parents didn't have the money, so I had to pay for that myself. And where I'm going with this is that I decided, okay, if I'm going to go to college, I want to make a 6-figure income because we didn't have any money. It's like, how do I do that? Where everybody back then was telling us, we're about the same age, about you got to go be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And I was like, well, shit. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to deal with a bunch of sick people that are always in pain. I don't really like blood and gore. And I really don't really interested in being a lawyer because then you're always sticking in a trial and you're arguing with people all day. It's different energy. So I say, well, maybe there's something in engineering. And well, sure as shit, the mechanical engineering is really related to automobiles. So I pursued the mechanical engineering degree, thinking that I would get out, work for the big 3 corporations and design Camaros or Corvettes, things I had loved. And when I graduated, I remember doing some phone interviews and talking to Detroit and listening to the offers that they were making and thinking like, that's it. I was making that much working in chemical refineries to pay for school. I was making that much as a waiter at the restaurants to pay for school. And I was like, man, I just don't really want to move to Detroit and get paid that little to work on cars. So I did like most people in the Houston area. I joined the oil industry, paid me about double what the automotive industry pays. And I got to stay in my home city and actually own the cars that I would have been working on.
Right, right.
So I bought myself a Pontiac Trans Am right out of college as a graduation gift to myself. And that $500 a month car note became one of the bases for me starting that website community. It's like, man, it'd be really cool if I could build this website because I already taught myself how to do that, code HTML, do Photoshop, photography. I do that as a hobby. I said, if I can make this website to make $500 extra per month, that would be really cool because it's like a free car. So when people talk about, making the millions of dollars that I did later on, it was never the intention. I just did things a lot of things right to make it happen that way.
Incrementally, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like just a lot of things for side hustles that people should do is thinking about like side hustle. Don't think about making millions in a side hustle. Just that could be an end game, but just think about, man, how could I make a mortgage payment from a side hustle? You know what I mean? Like that's just a little incremental thing. And then you have, like you said, a free car. I thought about this with another hustle that I have going on too. And I'm like, let me just get to 4,000. Let me just get to 4,000. Then I'll raise it to 8. Then I'll just incrementally bump it up. But if I get to 4,000, I mean, that's like having a free house that I want, you know, and just thinking about those ways. And then everything else that I make in my main hustle is just, you know, it just flows in everything else. So I love the way you approach that. So tell me about that. This whole thing was just like a website that people could go on and like, you know, was it a chat feature and all that, like a board, or what was it all about?
Basically became an online from, we upgraded it over time, but the main reason it grew is we built a lot of relational capital with a lot of the people that were the marketing managers and things that for performance shops, parts manufacturers, even the dealerships and things like that. We were all members of another community. And I just built a good relationship with somebody that's creating, was always creating. So LS1Tech was an online community for General Motors performance cars. And it started out as a forum, but the reason it grew is because I didn't take things as a hobby. A lot of times we start these hobby businesses and we do hobby effort, we get hobby results, and we wonder why we're not really getting ahead. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to make some money by advertising. But in order to get advertisers to come on the website, I had to entice people to show up and actually be present on the site. So I did that by building my personal brand before that was even a term as members of other sites. Before I launched mine, I was just answering questions. I was always contributing value. Same thing that you and I are doing on Clubhouse, on an Instagram. We're always out there contributing value, and we don't ask for anything in return. And there's a key to this because the more help that you put out there by answering people's questions, I was writing how-to articles on how to make your car go faster, how to be a better driver, how to do these different things yourself. And over time, over a period of a couple of years, really, people start to recognize that your name is synonymous with someone that's actually giving the answers. So when it comes time for you to go launch your own business or write your own book or launch your podcast or whatever we're doing nowadays, people will be like, hey, if that person's contributing this much value without asking for anything, let's go see what they're doing. Even out of curiosity. If not, we're going to go support them anyways, right? And that's what we do. We reward people for that good effort and value over time. And that was really a testament because within the first month, I'd already had 10 advertisers because said, hey, if you're going to start this, we're with you because we already see the value you create on these other websites. So we want to be a part of what you're doing. And I had two different customer bases when you think about this, because even though I had the paid advertisers, when I sold the website, we had over 150 advertising accounts. Now, growing into that, I had to build the personnel, the membership as well. And they didn't pay to be members. They were just there to consume the content. I had to create the content, but I still treated them like customers. Okay. And the other websites failed at this because they thought they had to only focus on the paid customers, which is the advertisers, and cater to them. But I was like, no, I have to build the community and treat them just like customers, if not, they're not paying, because if they're not there, the advertisers won't be there. If I have more of these people showing up, the advertising rates can increase.
Eyeballs. Yeah.
See? Yeah. It's all eyeballs. And so I would do giveaways, and I have this win-win-win scenario thing where I would contact one of the current advertisers, like, hey, would you like to be the featured sponsor for this month? Yeah. What does that take? Well, send me a $500 gift certificate that's only valid at your company. I will have an award for people to sign up on membership, and I will present it live and give it to them. And then they will come back and spend it with you. And so you get featured for an entire month. It doesn't cost me anything but my time and my audience. And somebody gets to win that. And it increases the membership count dramatically because we could see the server logs initially, and people could still view the website without logging in. We wanted them to log in because that's the only way we could prove that we had actually people showing up, you know, on the individual visits and accounts like that. So we had about 50% of people lurking is what we had called that. And we said, okay, we need to do something to get these people off of the lurking and sign up and create an account. So one, we have their email and their name and all these different information that we collect. And we could also see their behavior a little bit better and what they were looking at and how much time they were spending in each group and which forums within the forums were better or which ones were worse, which ones we can improve. So we're always watching things. A lot of things like what Facebook does now and Instagram does now, I was doing with a forum before even social media existed. Because you guys realize I sold that website in 2007. Facebook and Instagram didn't come until 2008 and 2010. You know, and when Tim Ferriss wrote his book, The 4-Hour Work Week, I think that was 2008 or 2009. I was already a multimillionaire by building a company that I didn't even have to be present to run, because I was a very demanding career with engineering. Sometimes I was gone for a month. I'd be floating in the middle of the ocean, or I'd be in Africa, or I'd be in France or England or Italy or anywhere like around the world. I could never count on my presence being there. So I had to create systems and processes and put the right people in place to manage the things that I wasn't there. And the beauty of that is I got to start using my website as a user, as an actual consumer, and seeing it from the ground level and seeing what was annoying to me and what I can improve. And so I got to use it from both sides, on the admin side and on the user side. And it gave me a really unique perspective of really building any type of community. And that's what I'm building now, is 365 Driven. That's an entrepreneurship community. There's thousands of members already. It's going to be millions of members because I'm comfortable in those big roles, and I've done it not once, but twice. I actually created that same business model with performancetrucks.net because I already had established relationships and I had an understanding of the business model. And that one grew to over 280,000 registered members. I've done that twice. And so now I'm just doing it with entrepreneurship, man.
So we'll get into 365 Driven in a second, but when you did this with the LS1Tech, first of all, how long, like when you're first starting out, was the membership growing as fast as you wanted it to, or was it actually surprisingly growing fast? Like in the beginning, did you have patience issues, like internal patience issues? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think initially the website we probably saw a growth spurt initially, like the first 2 weeks, obviously, because people are curious or nosy, or they just want to create an account. Somebody doesn't steal their username, that kind of thing. And we probably had 1,000 people join. And I remember the backstory behind this website, it would have never existed if I wasn't challenged. You know, you talk about what are you made out of? Okay. Like I said, we were supporting another existing website that several of us were members on, and we're active there. And the owner of that website wasn't maintaining it. Sometimes we would go log in and the website wouldn't even exist. And we're like, well, shit, where's it at? And he did this a couple of times, but the thing is he wasn't doing backups on the data. And all that content that we were creating would just get wiped. And we would be like, wow, I mean, we've had like 2 years of content that we created for you and it's gone. And I didn't save a copy of it. I definitely don't want to go upload all those things back again. And after that happened 3 times, we went to approach him with constructive feedback as one of his best supporters and said, hey, we see you've got 30 advertisers. We know what they get, you know, what they pay you because we know a few of them. And you know, you're making profit. Why aren't you spending some money on servers and a backup and making sure? Because the server host back then, if you didn't pay your bills, they would just delete your stuff. That's just, that's how they taught you a lesson. They're like, you didn't pay us. 1 day late, knocked out. And so rather than him taking that as constructive feedback, he said, well, if you think you could do a better job, why don't you go start your own website? And I was thinking to myself, well, I know how to do HTML. I know how to do Photoshop, pretty good with logos and marketing and branding. Maybe I can do this. I can go rent a server and upload some software and tweak some buttons and knobs here and make it functional. It'll work. I can figure this out as I go. And that's what I did. And you know, you talked about the members. We joined it, and first week I was kind of cocky. I was younger back then, my mid 20s, right? And I sent him an email, said, hey, we started our own website. And he said, well, when you have more members than I do, then you can tell me how to run a website. And at that time, he had about 10,000 members. And we hit that in the first year. And I made sure to email him a screenshot and said, okay, we've got more members than you two now. So are you ready to take some advice or what? He never replied, obviously. I was kind of a jerk off at that point. And we kind of laughed about it. But yeah, you don't challenge people that are your best supporters, the ones that are bringing you the potential revenue. You're challenging them to go do their own thing. Like that's the terrible lesson on his part. But I learned that as well. Is like, I would never do that to my own people.
And now when you went to sell it, did the people that wanted to buy it start approaching you, or did you start thinking about selling it before that?
We never really thought about selling that website. It was we would get it pitched a lot, you know, because obviously they could tell we had a lot of activity. We're the top of the marquee for all the General Motors. We had Chevrolet, Cadillac, Pontiac, all advertising directly on our websites at that point. I had all the VIP credentials, just like Motor Trend and Car and Driver. I was at the unveils. I was writing the articles for the automotive magazines. And so we had a lot of attention out there in the industry, and we were really well regarded as part of the industry. And so we always had these people that would come along and pitch and not understand that business model. Hey, would you like to sell your website? Well, yeah, make us an offer. What do you think it's worth? Because we were kind of nosy. We're kind of curious what they would say. And most of them always think about the Dr. Evil thing when he's like, $1 million. Well,
yeah.
They would say $100,000 because they didn't know our business model.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking, do you want to buy an advertising package? I mean, what are you asking me? Trying to like that? Is that quarterly? What are you talking about here? They just had no idea. They just think, because this is how naive a lot of people with money were back then, because they just thought it's a website. It's not a tangible asset. It's not like real estate. It's how much could it really be worth? I bet if we offered $100,000, they'd probably take it. Guys, we're making $400,000 a year profit on this thing. For several years, probably the last 3 years.
How many employees did you have?
0.
Oh, really?
We had a bunch of freelancers. Some of them we paid in car parts and discounts and racing memberships. And some of them we just paid based on the service that they provided. And a lot of them just wanted to be involved because they could be getting sponsorships for their own cars by getting free parts and writing how-to articles for those manufacturers and getting free access to racetracks and events because they were staff. So they got paid in a lot of perks that fulfilled their hobby of racing and building cars. So,
and what made you want to sell it though? Like what talk us through the thought process when somebody does come through with the right number, or what you think is a good number or whatever, why you want to sell it, and instead of having that cash flow.
Well, the year was 2006 when we got approached by the people that eventually bought it. And their approach was a little bit different. So we know right away, because they came in, they said, hey, we bought Corvette for them and the Corral.net, the Mustang group. They basically listed off 5 other websites that they just acquired, which were just as big as ours, but in different brands. So what they were doing is going around and buying the number 1 of every type of brand website.
Yeah.
And said, oh crap, I actually knew the owner of the Corvette for him. Actually, he's in my group now. And I emailed Troy. I was like, did you really sell your website? And he's like, absolutely. He goes, you should talk to them. I was like, okay. And so I started to think of a number that was in my head, and what would it take? And I was kind of getting, I guess, bored, because at this point realized that the Camaro and the Firebird were our biggest market at that time, and GM stopped building those in 2002. And we didn't know they were going to come back, because they said, hey, these may never come back. Pontiac died and it went away. It never came back, like 2010. But the new Camaro didn't come out to 2010. We didn't know it was going to come out, right?
Right.
So we said, hey, maybe this is like right there at the peak, and maybe we should get out of this. It's good. And, if they make this offer, we'll sell. And I think the number back then was 800,000. I said, if they made me an offer 800,000, I think I'd probably consider that pretty serious. And I'd probably do that. Well, their first offer was 1.5.
And what went through your head when they said that? Like, what's that? Do you remember?
Poker face. You had to have the poker face, obviously. Yeah. And I said,
yeah, but I said, what went through your mind? I didn't say, what did you say or look at?
I said, this is actually life-changing money. I'm in my early 30s and already had probably close to $1 million set up just from the businesses in my career. And when that happened, I was like, this is life-changing money. This is like this is 20 years. The way I think about it now is when you make a couple million on a sale, that really puts you about 20 years ahead in life. 20 years is a good number to think about. And it's like, man, I'm making the money that I might have in my late 40s and in my early 30s. And so the math checked out. And at that point, I didn't even have a lawyer at the time. I was like, man, I need to get in an M&A lawyer and like talk to them, because this is like, we're in the 7 figures now. Okay. So I knew an attorney. I contacted them, and he's like, well, aren't you going to counter? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, their first offer is always the lowest. So why would you just take their first offer? I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? He goes, well, what do you want? And we came up with a little quick valuation. I knew that I actually could have had a more higher valuation. He didn't know digital assets at the time as well as we do nowadays. But I said, man, I want to have a couple million after taxes, after capital gains, or, back then it was 15%. So it'll be 2.3. So when I pay my taxes, at least I'll be a multimillionaire on that. And that was our offer. It was, hey, 2.3. And they said, okay. They didn't even flinch. They're like, okay.
Damn.
Because they knew that the website was really worth probably 3.5 to 4.
Yeah.
right? Because we know now the different acquisition, the costs of getting 300,000 emails addressed that are targeted to a specific market. What
Yeah.
would that have cost in
Valid,
marketing just
powerful.
to have that, just to
Yeah.
build that list?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the value of these large communities now. I was like, man, I didn't even know that till 10 years after I sold it. I realized like, oh my gosh, that's why they jumped on it so fast.
Right.
So
So
yeah,
talk to
learned a
us about
lot.
365 driven and the mission that you have with that.
Well, nowadays my purpose is to impact the generational legacy of millions of people by teaching them confidence and business principles, things I've held for over 20 years. And I wrote the book Side Hustle Millionaire. It became a #1 bestseller on Amazon and sold thousands of copies since then. That was my first attempt to get what was in my mind out there. But the thing is, I wrote that book as a cowardly play because I didn't like doing what we're doing right now. I didn't like being on TV or interviews or radios or speaking on stage. I had a lot of stage fright and I had to go get lessons and join Toastmasters and hire speaking coaches. And I've been doing this for 3 years now. So it seems like it's really easy for me, and it is now, but I'm not the same person I was even 3 years ago. And I had to push myself to become the right person to carry that message. So I want to grow 365 driven towards millions of people getting to entrepreneurship, coaching, mentoring, support, things that we don't get as business owners, especially in our local friend groups. A lot of times people rely too much on their zip code friends, I say. And
Yeah.
you go have these dinners and people want to small talk and talk about Netflix and what their kids are doing on the weekends. And you're just like, man, I just want to talk about what's coming. And I want to talk about my dreams and I want someone to push me and go, man, are you sure that's all you can do? And rather than, is that all you can do? You know what I mean? So
Yep. Yep.
there's
Love it.
different people you got to surround yourself with. And I didn't have that. I became an entrepreneur by reading books and magazines and trying to figure things out because I didn't know anybody with money back then. And everybody's looking for what we call the millionaire mindset. And to me, dude, I didn't even think I had that until 10 years after I was a multimillionaire. I literally didn't think I had. I thought, did I get lucky?
Yeah.
But
That's
I
what I was
started
going to ask
looking
you.
back, and as I
Yeah.
learned, is like, man, I was just doing a lot of things right. I was
Yep.
just doing a lot of things right.
Yep. Yeah. I love that, man. I want to collaborate with you. I have an idea for what you're trying to do and what a total separate mission that could definitely align with what you're doing. We're going to talk more about that later. But I love what you're doing. How can my audience get engaged with you? Is it 365driven.com? I see on the microphone.
Yeah, that's the easiest way. Website's there, and everything I do is on that website. I learned that from podcasting. You got to have one place to send people, 365driven.com.
Yeah, go see Tony365driven.com, guys. Go get that book as well. Side Hustle Millionaire. Is that what it was called?
Yep.
Right? Side Hustle Millionaire. Go check that out. It wasn't luck what he did. We all know that. I mean, you got to be in the right place at the right time, but there's definitely a lot of things that were put into place that led to that, and to me, no matter where we are right now in life, it's our fault. It's something, decisions that we made, actions we took, thoughts that we had go through our head, and words we said that led us to where we are right now. So if you're not happy where you are right now, the good news is you can basically create your future, but you need to do it intentionally. And that's what happened. And that's what Tony's doing now. That's what I'm doing. So Tony, final question of the day has to do with the rocket fuel law. I created, just like John Maxwell has leadership laws, I thought to myself, well, I can create a law too. If I find something that works and it's 100% foolproof, if you implement the steps by taking anything that would normally stop people, slow them down, discouragements, setbacks, screw ups of our own, all these different toxic things that happen to us. If we can store them in our tank instead of our trunk, so that we can convert it into rocket fuel instead of weighing us down, we can become unstoppable. But what has that law meant to you in your life and some things you've been through?
I think for me, growing up half Asian in Texas, I never really felt like I got the opportunities for leadership in school. And I was always kind of counted out on a lot of things. And when you grow up in small town Texas, especially football towns like I did, you're usually the captains of the team had last names that were legacy names from that school, or their dads had a business on the main street, a popularity contest, a lot of politics. Well, I grew up in the crappy neighborhood in the crappy house, like I said. So I didn't really feel like I got included in a lot of things like that, even though I played sports and football and track and all these things. I tried my best to fit in, but nowadays when they talk about, hey, you want to be a leader, like you learned this in school, like, no, they don't teach you that. They also don't teach you entrepreneurship, because I used to think that you had to be rich to be a business owner. And I never thought I would be a business owner. So I used to think that you had to have a brick and mortar on Main Street with Whatley's construction or Whatley's artwork, something with your name on the window. And I was like, man, it's going to take a lot of money just to be able to business owner. So when you go through school nowadays, it's like, hey, we don't have options. We think that education is just to get a job, get an education, work a steady life, and have that. And so for my fuel in my tank, man, is that I just wanted to be the hero I wanted to be the hero I needed at that age. I think we all become the hero of our childhood that we really needed. And for me, I want to raise the awareness of entrepreneurs an option. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I want the public school system to understand that you need to quit turning out kids saying that they have to go to college, that they have to get a job and do all these things, because that's not true, because there's a lot of different options. You're just not being taught by the right people. So my long-term play would be to have a public school or curriculum that teaches entrepreneurship and leadership, legitimately teaches every single student, rather than the ones that just have the names that are legacy names. So that's what fuels me, man.
I love it, man. I love it, Tony. I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for the relationship we've started, and I'm going to look to develop that with you. And, I just appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, C-Roc. Good to see you, bud.
You guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. Thank you for coming and joining us. Please go subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. Also, if you like to watch these YouTube, we're going to start doing a lot more with YouTube besides these videos for the podcast. But if you like to watch them, go to Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco. Check it out, subscribe there as well, and watch out for our new content that we're going to be pushing out on YouTube. Until next time, guys, thank you so much and be unstoppable.